All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. So, Ted Nugent seems to be the only one calling out the effect of toxic, lethal substances that are used in a recreational way. For somebody who's as libertarian as yours truly, I always have second thoughts about, hey, let's just legalize a bunch of drugs and we'll see what happens to people, right? People don't need more vices. They don't, because they don't have control. And what happened to Taylor Hawkins should be a wake-up call to the rock community and the celebrity community in general. Ted Nugent says he believes this is a very selfish activity. And I would agree with Ted, but I'd also add to it that within the rock community, there's an expectation that this is a normal part of this lifestyle. And this has been going on since the 1960s. And when you look back at all of the victims of this lifestyle, you know, I think of Janis Joplin, who was literally on top of the world, had a one-of-a-kind voice, had a one-of-a-kind personality, clearly one of the best female singers, rock singers in the history of music, right? And people cite her as an influence. And then what people tend to do is, oh yeah, and I want to live like Janis. I want to live on the edge just like Janis, because the only way Janis got to where she got was because, you know, she was drinking and partying and injecting certain things into her body. And so it becomes kind of like a folklore. Like, in order to be a really cool rock star and really push the envelope, I've got to be more like all these people who are no longer here, right? Ted Nugent never did this stuff. He is one of those rare examples in music where he has lived fairly on the straight and narrow for a long time. I'm not going to say back in the 70s he wasn't doing some stuff that, not substance abuse stuff, but just crazy stuff. And I'm sure he'll tell you that he wasn't, you know, behaving, especially when it came to members of the opposite sex. And of course, that makes Ted a target today because of his past. But he's been married for quite some time. And I think him saying to the world that this guy should have taken his wife and children in consideration, he should have taken them into account and thinking to himself, okay, I've got all the money I need. I've got this great family. 50 years old. It's not like this guy wasn't old enough to know better. You know, I cut people a lot of slack when they become famous and everything happens to them at once. And again, they're thinking, hey, I'm indestructible. You know, 20 somethings, when you're 20, you don't think of like, hey, I'm going to die soon. That's not on your mind. And then, you know, over time, you know, it's like you touching the hot wire or the radiator or whatever, and it burns you. And then you realize, I can't keep doing that. I can do it for a little while and I might be able to get away with it. And I can be a functioning whatever. I can be a functioning addict, but at some point, it's going to catch up with you. It always does. And as you get older, and then, you know, there is this other theory that's out there when it comes to Hawkins. And it popped up on Twitter and various places, and I was sent screenshots. Something that may have contributed to this problem that nobody is talking about. And it makes it even more likely that if you're mixing these two ideas together, that can't be good. Now, the media won't even touch that. They would rather go with the OD narrative. Seriously. It's sad. And people should be speaking out more against, if we're going to go with their narrative, which this is what they want us to go with. And I think if you get a tox report and this is what it says, and you put that information out there, and again, there hasn't been a final, conclusion to this. This is preliminary stuff, and they might come back and say, no, it wasn't that. But I have a feeling they're going to come back with that, because for their overall narrative to continue and for people not to think in terms of, okay, maybe there was something else that happened here, for that narrative to continue, they're going to just go with this. And it's super sad. It's sad either way, because it didn't have to happen. So Ted Nugent, who does his nightly Nuge, it's basically a live stream where he goes and talks about all kinds of things. He says it's heartbreaking on so many levels. He's talking about Hawkins, 50 years old with a horrible long-term celebration of substance abuse. I am casting judgment because substance abuse is selfish. His wife and daughter, I thought he had more kids than just one, but his wife and daughter, they should have been taken into consideration. Is spending time with your wife and daughter more important than getting high, or less important than getting high? Now, he goes on to talk about his former bass player, Greg Arama, so gifted at 15. Listen to the bass part on Journey to the Center of the Mind by Amboy Dukes. And the guy was just a gifted virtuoso, and he started smoking dope and ended up with heroin and died when he was, I don't know, early 20s. And the future he could have had. I told Jimi Hendrix, I said, no, I don't want your dope. It's going to kill you, Jimmy, according to Ted Nugent. Wow. Bon Scott would have come to the studio when my band was recording Weekend Warriors out of Miami, and AC/DC was coming in and working on Highway to Hell, just phenomenal musical powers. And he'd come in drunk every day with a bottle of Jack Daniels or Old Granddad whiskey, and he'd go, hey, Teddy, try some of this. And he smelled like a diaper. What a talent, what a nice guy. These were all nice guys. So that's the kind of blunt truth that people need to hear after this. Instead, I see all of these just, I don't know, flowery tributes coming in, which is fine. He was a nice guy and he was talented, right? He was in a band that I didn't register for me, all right? People can tell me all day long, Foo Fighters. My friend calls them the Foo Fighters, right? But it doesn't take away from the fact that he was a decent guy. But then if you've got this other thing going on, that decency, that likability has this kind of cloud over it, because then, as Nugent says, okay, you're an adult, you're supposed to be responsible, you have a family. This isn't stuff that you do. Maybe you did it 30 years ago. You sowed your wild oats. There are a lot of rock stars that abuse themselves for many years, and they just got to the end of themselves and said, no, I can't do this anymore. This isn't productive. This is hurting me. It's probably hurting my career. Look at Joe Walsh. If Joe Walsh can clean up, by the way, thanks to Don Felder, that Joe Walsh got cleaned up. And who's in the band? Joe Walsh, and Don Felder is not in the band. The Eagles probably wouldn't have got back together again. It's another video. Successfully, if Joe Walsh wasn't there sober. But that shows you that you can learn a lesson and you can change. You can be known as this party animal, and you could still be nostalgic about the stories of not knowing, where the door is and so forth. It's like autobiographical. Life's been good. Can't find the door. But in reality, that's really bad, and it could kill you. It could kill you in the end. You could just walk right off that balcony, after you throw the TV off the balcony, you could just throw yourself right off and not even know. This is serious stuff. And in the case of Taylor Hawkins, it's more serious because there's so much celebration and so many accolades coming in, and everybody says what a nice guy he was. Well, he's not here anymore. he should be still here. And people should at least do a little editorial message, but they don't feel comfortable with it because he just died and his family is grieving and his fans are upset. But people, this is the teachable moment here, not 5 years from now. Well, yeah, Taylor Hawkins shouldn't have done what he did. No, the teachable moment is right now. And that's why Ted Nugent is talking about this. And I think it's appropriate. I know a lot of people think it's insensitive, but at some point you've got to face reality. And if we're going to encourage people to take the high road instead of saying, well, this is rock and roll, this is what, and it's in every form of music, by the way. You don't think it's in hip hop and pop and rap and all these other things that have become far more popular than rock and roll these days. It's everywhere. It's expected behavior. It's like the more famous you become, the more prone you are to be involved with things that are probably going to kill you or might kill you. And if you can survive your younger years, it could do some permanent damage to you where you're not as functional anymore. So anyway, I'm not disparaging the guy, Taylor Hawkins. I'm not saying that he was a bad person. I'm saying that to live this lifestyle and be 50 years old and, you know, definitely old enough to know better, but yet you continue on and you've got responsibilities and you've got fans and you've got friends and obviously you got your family, right? I think we can do better. I think we can do better. I think that's the point of what Nugent's trying to say, is we have to do better. We have to learn. I mean, rock and roll does not have to be a sport of drugs, alcohol, and promiscuous activities, you know, even though I'm sure maybe Nugent was part of the third one there. But the point is, none of it leads to really good outcomes. It's just, I mean, again, you got bands that sow their wild oats and then they grow out of it. But in this case, Taylor Hawkins did not grow out of it. So in any event, that's my video on the topic. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and I will be back soon. See you then.